from the Gospel according to John. Now, a man was ill, Lazarus from Bethany, which was the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who had anointed Jesus with perfumed oil and dried his feet with her hair. It was her brother Lazarus who was ill. So the sisters sent word to Jesus saying, "The one you love is ill." When Jesus heard this, he said, "This illness is not to end in death, but is for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Mary and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was ill, he remained for 2 days in the place where he was. After this, he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." But the disciples said to him, "Rabbi, they were just trying to stone you, and you want to go back there?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours in a day? If one walks during the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if one walks at night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him." He said this, and then he told them, "Our friend Lazarus is asleep, but I'm going to awaken him." So the disciples said to him, "Jesus, if he's asleep, he'll be saved. He'll wake up." But Jesus was talking about his death, while they thought that he meant ordinary sleep. So then Jesus said to them clearly, "Lazarus has died. And I'm glad for you that I was not there, that you may believe. Let us go to him." So Thomas, called Didymus, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go to die with him." When Jesus arrived, he found Lazarus, and he had already been in the tomb for 4 days. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary sat at home. Martha said to him, "Jesus, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise." Martha said to him, "I know he will rise in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus told her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even if he dies, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Jesus. I have come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world." When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary secretly, saying, "The teacher's here, and he's asking for you." Soon as she heard this, Mary rose quickly and went to him. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said to him, "Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the townsfolk who had come with her weeping, he became deeply troubled, and he said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Sir, come and see." And Jesus wept. So the crowd said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not the one who opened the eyes of the blind man have done something so that this man would not have died?" So Jesus, upset again, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone laid across it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the dead man's sister, said to him, "Jesus, by now there'll be a stench. She's been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus raised his eyes and said, Father, thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me, but because of the crowd here, I've said this that they may believe that you sent me. And when he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, hands and feet tied with burial bands, and his face wrapped in a cloth. And Jesus said to the crowd, Untie him, let him go. Now many of the crowd who had come to Mary and seen what he had done began to believe in him. This is a story of one of the miracles performed by our brother Jesus. Praise to you, Jesus Christ. When I was a child, one of my favorite books was a book of poems by Robert Louis Stevenson, including the poem My Shadow. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me, and what can be the use of him is more than I can see. He's very, very like me from the heels up to the head, and I see him jump before me when I jump into my bed. The funniest thing about him is the way he likes to grow. Not like proper children, which is always very slow. For he sometimes shoots up taller like an India rubber ball, and sometimes gets so little that there's none of him at all. How fun it was as a child to play with our shadows, right? When we ran outside on a beautiful spring day like today. It's quite a different experience as adults to wrestle with the parts of us that we keep locked away. Those parts that we call our shadow selves. Parts of us that, for whatever reason, are not aspects of our public image that we like to portray. And yet, at moments when we least expect it, they find a way to seep through the cracks of our unconscious to the light of day. Through our interactions with others, or maybe an internal reaction to a situation that we find ourselves in, they make themselves known. I think there was something about a stiff upper lip of the family that I grew up in that makes it hard for me at times to admit to others when I hurt. My father was a man who struggled with depression to the point that it would often suck the oxygen out of the room. His moods were so oppressive that there was no space for anyone else to talk about what they were struggling with. And my mother, she would scurry about as if there was nothing wrong. It reminds me of that British war slogan, keep calm, carry on. And so it was in an interview for the priesthood, the psychologist who assessed us, when I was asked about the death of our son, which had happened just a year or so before, that I was confronted by her about my neatly wrapped responses to the trauma of Tony's death. Deep in the shadows of my being was a grieving mom who knew better than to appear bereaved, especially when being interviewed for a program that I very much wanted to be accepted into. I kept that stiff upper lip that I learned so well. But what would it be like to be comfortable expressing my grief? More okay being the one in the room who is wounded rather than being the one taking care of other people's wounds. To be, as Henry Nouwen calls it, a wounded healer, bringing the parts of me that hurt into the light of day and integrating them with the parts of me that are fully alive. This is what Jesus calls us to do with the story of his beloved friend Lazarus. As I reflected on the gospel story, there were several phrases that stood out to me. The first was what Jesus heard from those who sought him on behalf of Martha and Mary. Jesus, the one you love, is ill. This is the prayer that we have for one another at Mass, isn't it? The prayers of the faithful. Jesus, Bridget, whom you love, is ill. Jesus, her twin sister, whom you love, is ill. Mary Long, whom you love, is ill. Micah, whom you love, is ill. We are called to carry the burdens of one another, and we are called to carry the heartache that Jesus has for those who are suffering. It's a part of being a disciple of Jesus and a part of being in community with one another. And then we hear the cries of Mary and Martha. Jesus, if you had only been here. It was a cry of desolation, perhaps not unlike what Jesus felt on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? We come to trust that God has the power to intervene when bad things are about to happen. We don't just want a God who feels our pain when we suffer, but a God who prevents all human suffering. Think how often you and I have struggled to pray for the events happening around the world right now. How many times have we said, God, remove them from positions of power, stop the insanity, only to wake up the next day to another war, another unjust ICE detainment and brutal abuse of power. God, where are you when your children are dying? We understand Martha and Mary's disappointment that Jesus hadn't come running at the first sign that Lazarus was ill. And yet what we also observe is that in their relationship with Jesus, there was enough depth to hold that disappointment. It was okay for them to say, we're disappointed in you. They felt free enough to let him know that he had let them down, and Jesus was so moved by their sorrow that he wept. Our gospel today says that when Jesus saw her weeping, he became deeply troubled, and Jesus wept. Sometimes when we are brave enough to let our shadow self show, to recognize that our reactions to others come from somewhere else, far deeper than what's really going on. And when we share with a trusted friend how we came to suppress what formed our shadow selves, it isn't being rescued from the pain that we need. Sometimes we just need a friend to sit with us in the pain, without judgment, without trying to fix us, just to weep with us. This is the humanity of Jesus on full display. When his friends expressed their grief and their disappointment, he felt it. When he joined them in their pain, he wept with them. But what is it like for us when we are sitting in the tombs of our own making? Not too long ago, I was contacted by a staff person in the school social work. Nice young man. He directs the community engagement board that I participate in. He asked that we would meet for coffee and to talk about a few things. My gut immediately tightened. I thought, I've done something wrong. He's a sweet kid. He actually went to school with some of my younger children. We have a connection. There was no reason at all to fear a cup of coffee, which we've done before. We've had delightful conversations over coffee. But this time I thought for sure that I'd done something wrong, that I thought he needed to tell me that the dean's office had received complaints and wanted me removed from the board. It comes from my history with alpha men, which he is not. But who knows who's directing him, right? So I read into the tone of his email, can we meet? We need to talk. It reminded me a bit of a former pastor we know who wanted to dismantle our social justice program, the bullying and the forcing us out, and other similar situations. This is my shadow. I had a choice in that moment. I could have avoided the meeting, say, I'm just super busy right now. I just don't have the time. Sorry, maybe another time. Or I could have preempted the painful encounter by quitting before I got fired. I could have gone loaded for bear, ready to refute any charges that he wanted to throw my way. See, it's all very protective of the ego, the wounded ego that never had a chance to heal. Jesus said to the crowd gathered around the tomb of Lazarus, "Take away the stone." And he said to me that day, "Sit with your wounds here. Then take away the stone that has kept that pain locked away. Let your shadow come forth from the tomb." And like Martha, I protested, "Oh, but the stench. This pain's pretty ugly. The wounds have grown infected." "It's okay," said Jesus. "Take away the stone. Let the antiseptic of light shine on your pain." It is what we do when we recognize and embrace our shadow selves and choose to carry them as a part of ourselves, but not the part that determines our reactions. We let the healing begin. It's not a process of shame for the weaker parts of us, but a process of acceptance, of becoming whole again. So I wrote back to this young man, "Sure, would love to talk. Just let me know when and where." And when we did meet, I was anxious, but I decided to put on a cheery face. And in the end, he wanted to bring me into the work that some professor was doing. He thought we would be a perfect match. So I smiled at my shadow, let out a sigh of relief. As with Lazarus, it was a resurrection moment. But sometimes we need a little help, don't we? Sometimes we just don't know our shadow selves. Others might encounter those parts of us. They might smell the stench and understand that we carry the decay of old wounds, but we are simply reactive. We pop off with responses to things that seem justified to us. We make assumptions of others based on our feelings, and we run with those assumptions without clarifying, without verifying that our interpretations of the situations are accurate. In our gospel story, we see Jesus calling upon the community to assist Lazarus with the strips of cloths that kept him bound. If you've ever had the privilege of participating in a 12 steps program, you will have seen this sort of communal effort in practice, helping a fellow addict free themselves of the habits that keep them bound. If you've ever served a meal at the soup kitchen or filled bags at the food pantry, you have seen in action a communal effort to remove the hunger that keeps a person bound. We can do that for one another when the shadow dares to step out of its tomb. We can be there without judgment. We can provide that safe space where the shadow can be understood and embraced and helped to adapt to life in the light. Remember Saint Irenaeus, who said, "The glory of God is a human fully alive." Well, to live in harmony with those parts of us that come out of the shadows, out of the tombs where we have buried them, that is to be fully alive. Every part of us fully alive. Whether we're struggling with our own shadows or being impacted by the shadow selves of another, as Bridget Mary Meehan reminds us, today we proclaim a gospel that is not distant or abstract, but embodied in each one of us and on the streets of our cities, all around the world, in the lives of our neighbors and the people we will never meet. Like Martha and Mary, our world today looks at suffering, loss, and death and cries out, "Jesus, if you had only been there." Resurrection is not merely spiritual, it is social, political, embodied, and communal. It is the work of rolling away the stones that block human flourishing, stones that imprison dignity and life. In these times, we are called to help one another walk free, to remove the bindings of structural harm, racism, militarized enforcement without accountability, dehumanizing rhetoric, policies that separate families, policies that take life and bring destruction and death everywhere. This is the work of love in the streets and in the pews. This is the work of faith in the face of protest and political turmoil. This is the resurrection that Jesus invites us into now, not someday, but now. The raising of Lazarus assures us that love has the final word. Grief is seen and felt, and God calls forth life even in places of death. May we, as a faithful and compassionate community, be instruments of that life, unbinding ourselves and one another, healing, advocating for justice, and walking together towards resurrection. Amen.